Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. My name is Angelia, and it is time again for Friday Reads on what I believe to be March 25th, but my calendar is way over there. I'm sitting kind of askew in a different spot today, but I'll double check on that. So, I hope you've been having a good week. I'm going to talk about my reading and viewing. First of all, a sort of random tidbit, but not exactly, because this is a random tidbit, but it kind of illustrates why I love YouTube so much. And of course, I love BookTube most of all, but YouTube in general just really suits me for just the randomness of my mind and all of the things that just float through it that somebody else has already thought about and placed there for me. So here's my little story. Yesterday when I woke up, my very first waking thought, and I have no idea why, because I don't think I was having a dream or anything, but my very first thought, the second I woke up, was about this movie that I saw when I was maybe 11 or 12. And I saw it was an old horror movie that I think is from the 60s, 50s or 60s. We'll check the year on this movie. But I saw it when I was a kid. I used to sit up late on Saturday night and watch old horror science fiction movies that were on this program called Creature Features that was broadcast out of a TV station in San Francisco, because we lived in the Bay Area at that time. And I would stay up late and watch these old movies, and there was a host, and he named Bob Wilkins, and he would come in and have funny comments, and sometimes he had guests, and there's a ton of stuff about him on YouTube. Anyway, this movie just drifted into my mind, and of course I looked it up, and the movie in its entirety is on YouTube. And also, I'm going to put the trailer, because the trailer is just solid gold. It is like the trashiest thing. And anyway, to cut a long story short and move on in a second, it's a movie about this man who, it's kind of a mad scientist movie, kind of Frankensteinish kind of theme. But this man is a scientist, and he has been, playing around with human life, and there's a car crash, and somehow in this car crash he is not injured, but his fiance is decapitated, and he grabs her head and runs back to his lab, and he puts her on this tray with electrodes, and she's alive, and she can just talk and have conversations even though she has no lungs or anything. And he has an evil plan to kill a woman somewhere and then attach her head to the body so that she can live on. And she's against the plan, but what can she do, because she's stuck on a tray. So that's what I remembered from this movie that I saw decades ago, and it has been restored to me through the miracle of YouTube. I don't think I'm going to watch the movie. The trailer was enough for me to rekindle my fond memories, but there you have it. And I'm going to put that trailer down for you to enjoy as well if you so choose. All right. Let's move on almost to books. What have I been watching this week? Finished season 2 of Hacks. We finished season 1 of Shrinking. And I'm not sure what we're watching next. We did watch episode 1 of a show last night, and we really liked it. So we're going to watch a little more and see how it goes. It was called Rain Dogs. It was a British show. It was kind of a dark comedy. It's about, at least episode 1 was about a single mom I think they're in London. It's British. And her young daughter, and at the beginning of the episode they are getting evicted from an apartment, and the whole episode is her scrambling to find a place for them to sleep that night, and she's trying to contact various friends, and she has to reluctantly accept the help of a friend that just got out of prison, and there's something very complicated about their relationship. So that's about as far as it got, but it was a serious situation, but then there was a lot of humor in it. And I really felt for this mom and her kid, and I'm really curious about this other guy. And then she had another friend she kept trying to call that was passed out at a phone booth the whole time. So anyway, I'm curious. If you've seen this show, let me know if you have watched more episodes and what you think about it. So that's what we've been watching. So finally, I'm going to get to the week in reading, which is what this channel is purportedly about. So let's go. All right. When last we spoke, I was reading Agatha Christie's The Mysterious Affair at Styles. This is written or published in 1920, and it's the first novel in which I can't ever say his name, Poirot, that detective. It's the first time he appears in her novels, and it is narrated by the young man Hastings, who is spending a little recuperative holiday at a friend's home in the English countryside. But of course, this is soon interrupted by a murder. And this is one of those classic cases involving the murder of someone who has some money and property to disperse, and multiple wills, and which one was the most recent will, and did somebody get rid of a will, and multiple motives and surprise identities and all those kind of things that appear in many of her books. And the mystery itself was fun, and I didn't figure out all the twists and turns up to the end. It didn't give itself away to me, so I enjoyed it on that level. I didn't like this book as well as I liked another one that I read in the past year, which was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I thought that was a better written novel, and the surprises were more surprising, and it was just a little bit less textbook of a, I know, like, she wrote this one and this is the textbook, and then other people have followed the format, but still, I can't help that I've read all these other books and then I read this and it seems a little bit formulaic, but it was fun anyway. Except I had this caveat that kind of soured it a little bit, was the casual racism that popped up several times during the book. I mean, I'm not shocked that that is in an Agatha Christie novel because she does that, but I still don't like it. I don't enjoy it when it rears its ugly head. So there were a couple of times when a certain character who never really gets very developed in the story is spoken of disparagingly as a Jew. And then there was also a casual drop of the N word one time in a conversation. There's a group of people that are discussing some dress up clothes and costume items, and a maid is explaining that the people that live in the house, sometimes they like to put on a little skit or a play and they use these dress up clothes. And then she goes on to explain that if they need to use makeup, they just use burnt cork. And then she drops that this one person one time played an in, and then she just had the hardest time getting off the makeup. And I mean, I guess back then they did not have any Clinique blackface remover available, so she had to scrub this cork off of her face. But, that just, I was just reading along and then that drops, and, my 2023 conditioning is, that's always a shocker when that word just pops up out of nowhere. So I didn't care for that. And of course, in the scene, she just says it and they go on, and nobody says anything or has any kind of reaction to that she said that, and that they're talking about dressing up in blackface and, caricatures of people. But it was in there, but I kept reading. So the book overall, I know a lot of people really like this book. I liked it okay as far as the mystery goes, and okay, it was all right. So if there is another really great must-read Agatha Christie book, you can let me know about that in the comments. I am still reading, but I'm almost finished with David Copperfield. And in fact, let's check and see where I'm at. I'm on page 794. The book has 850 pages, so I am in the home stretch. And I really want to finish this book before I go on a trip that's coming up in a few days, because I am obviously not going to bring this with me on an airplane, but I don't want to get hung. I mean, if I was halfway through, I wouldn't mind putting it down for a few days and coming back, but I'm so close to the end, I don't want to get left with like one little strand of the ending. And I feel the sense of the ending and everything's sort of resolving now, and I'm in that part of the book, so I want to just keep on. So I might kind of prioritize that in the next few days to finish David Copperfield, and then I can share my final thoughts about that, and also my reading experience reading that following Demon Copperhead. I can talk about that coming up soon once I finish it. And now I'll insert a little spoiler watch right here because I want to talk about my takeaway of David Copperfield in this week of reading. And then I'll put this another little reminder when it's okay to come back. In case you don't want to know at all, if you have not read this book and you have not read Demon Copperhead, you might want to avert your ears for just a minute or two. But what struck me in this week in the reading was I was more aware of the older adult narrator of David, and he's been there the whole way. He's made it clear that it is a look back at his younger days up to a certain point in time, but it was more noticeable in this portion of the book when he starts to reflect on his marriage to Dora and the outcome of that. And I found it to be really some lovely and poignant moments where he thinks about their early days, their happy times, and little kind of snapshots. And that is, definitely a foreshadowing of the end of that relationship. And he's also reflecting upon the choices that he's made, and once he is a husband, he's able to see more clearly the value of partnership in a marriage that he didn't really understand when he was a teenager and fell madly in love with a beautiful girl. And it's nice, it's intricate in his thoughts about how he loves her and he is devoted to her, but he can't help thinking about different comments that people have made to him and things he's thinking about on his own about the true value of having a partner that you can really talk to and share things with. And he does have a person in his life that fulfills that role, but she's not his wife. So there's that. There's things running in his background that he's not even aware of when he starts to think and articulate them in this novel. And I really like how Dickens handles that. I like how he handles it in this novel better than how he handled it in his own personal life, from what I've read. But that's another story. So it also reminded me of a couple of scenes in Pride and Prejudice when Lizzie is talking to her father and he's advising her to make sure that when you marry someone, choose someone who you respect. And he does detail a little bit how he married someone who was light and fun and frothy and pretty and sort of the it girl of the moment, but he didn't respect her, and their marriage is imbalanced. And that's a part in that novel when Elizabeth is realizing that her father, that she has a really strong kinship with, is not very kind and respectful to her mother, and it doesn't really sit that well with her now that she's an adult and kind of thinking about marriage and who she wants to marry. So anyway, I saw that those two, the same theme kind of comes up in both of the books. All right, end of spoiler. Woo! Hey, we can move on. So I will have summary thoughts about David Copperfield very soon. So going in a completely different direction, the other book that I am reading right now is Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. And oh my gosh, this book is just crushing me. I can barely even speak about it. I keep having to put this book down and just digest some of the things that are happening in this story. If you have not read these books, you need to start with Parable of the Sower. And hold on. Okay, I'm back. Parable of the Sower. I don't know why I felt like I had to go get a visual aid, but this is the first book, and now I'm reading the sequel. I'm almost speechless trying to explain this. So I read this book a few months ago. I talked very highly about it. I put it in my top 12 of the year. This one, I think, was written, when did this one come out? 1993. This one is maybe 1996. These two were written pretty close together, Rumor has it that she did mean to write a third one, but she passed away before she could do that. She wrote some other books after these two, but she apparently wanted to circle back and write another one, but she ran out of time, sadly. But in the first book, we learn about the conditions in the early 2020s in this vision, and how there's been this sort of decay of the institutions and the infrastructure and just the basic way of life in the United States. Things have kind of fallen apart. There's been economic crisis. There's climate crisis beginning, and it's talked more specifically about in the next book. But the young narrator is a teenage girl in this book who lives in a gated community. The community guards itself. There's a lot of roving, I don't know, kind of vagabonds that come through. Some of them are drug addicts. There's a certain drug that sort of took over that had weird side effects. And there's desperate people that just kind of maraud through and will pillage towns and things like that. But it's just sort of a dangerous, ominous climate. And her father's a Baptist minister who just wants to kind of keep the wagons circled, to keep them safe. But young Lauren Olamina feels like there needs to be more done. Everyone needs to be ready for this town to fall. And she is developing her own ideas about the future and how to be prepared. And when these things come to pass, she kind of rises up as an unlikely leader of a group of survivors who straggle across California and start a new community. So in the second book, she has established a community called Acorn, but she's also establishing a new religion called Earthseed. And that is one of the main problems in the story for her and the people who are connected to her, and also problems for the reader. And the perspective of this book is that in the future, her daughter is reading her journals and some fragments of things that her father wrote as well. And she is explaining, she's trying to make sense of what happened with the parents that she didn't really know. We find out what happens in this community, its struggles, the conflicts. Olamina and her husband disagree on what they should do. She has a husband who's much older than her, and when she gets pregnant, he really, really wants to go and live in this more established city that needs a doctor. He's a doctor. She does not want to leave this community that she started, and everyone's at odds with her about this religion. Everyone's kind of like, we like the place, but this Earthseed stuff's a little far-flung. And they kind of, not that many people really believe in it. Most of them just put up with it because she requires it. Even her daughter reading it in the future is a little exasperated with it. And I'm exasperated with it because it just keeps coming up in the book. And I'm waiting to see how that plays out by the end, what the importance of it turns out to be thematically, or if the author is suggesting anything with it. But I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but here's what I want to say about this book. I don't want to say too much about the plot, but this book, the reason why this book is blowing me away is the scenario, the climate that is taking place in the U.S. at the opening of this book. And what is going on? They're living in this little community. Things have slightly stabilized over the past few years in the country, but someone who's running for president is a destabilizing figure, a divisive figure, and his name is Jarrett. He is a senator from Texas, and he is ultra right-wing. He is stirring up the flames of protesters who are starting to launch racist and xenophobic attacks on small groups of people like Acorn in his name. He is not acknowledging this. He is not officially sanctioning this, but he fans the flames with his rhetoric. And he is, I jotted down a few things I wanted to remember to mention about this scenario because I'm just kind of aghast at some of the parallels. So he he's kind of participating in this climate where this non-specific decline in recent years, there has to be a scapegoat. So they're blaming the most vulnerable members of society. They're blaming poor people, homeless people, drug addicts, immigrants, whoever is not white and Christian. And he's very misogynistic as well. He begins a campaign to separate children from their parents and place them into re-education, proper homes. And this theme has come up a lot of times in recent novels as well. I know this came up in Celeste Ng's recent book, and also a book I have not read called The School for Good Mothers. Climate change is rampant, but he's not really addressing that. And everyone is saying he seems dangerous, but he's not going to get elected because his followers are so crazy and hostile and scary that nobody's going to really he can't possibly be elected, could he? Okay, and the craziest part of all is, guess what his campaign slogan is? Yeah, make America great again. I kid you not. I kept having to double check and make sure this book was written in the early 90s. So there it is, folks. And not only that, but she also in great detail describes the new fad that is distracting people and making them unable to focus on reality, which is virtual reality headsets. And at that point, I'm just wondering where her time machine is, because obviously she used it to write these books, and I think she might have used it to write Kindred too, so she could go back and get those historical details just right. Octavia Butler, she is blowing my mind. This book is like a roller coaster. It's a nightmare. It's a crystal ball. I'm a little more than halfway through. It's so unsettling, and trigger warning, it's very violent. There's all kinds of violence, including sexual violence in this book. Things take terrible turns. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried, but it is so good, and it is shocking, and it's prescient, and I'm loving it. So thank you for enduring my rambling and long-winded and disconnected discussion of this book that is just messing with my mind. Also, I was doing a little research because I wanted to learn more. I'm going into my Octavia Butler era here. And so I was online looking things up about her, and I found that the African American Museum that's part of the Smithsonian in DC has just started, I think just this week, a new exhibit for the next year about Afrofuturism. I'm going to connect the link for that show below, because just the website itself is very interesting and has a lot of parts that you can explore through it. But if you get a chance, if you ever find yourself in DC, do visit this museum because it is fantastic. We got to go there last fall. I loved it, and I wish I could go back again now and see this show because it looks amazing. So let's see. I think that's about it. I don't know what I'm going to read next because I just have to survive Octavia Butler, and then I will look around and pick up the pieces and see what I feel like reading next. I'm going to be taking a trip this coming week, so I'll be picking out something portable to take with me. And it's going to mess with my schedule a little bit. I'll have a Tuesday video out, and if I can tape something for Friday in advance, that's what I'm going to do. It won't be a Friday reads because I will have to make it so far in advance that I won't really know what to say, but I might be able to do either a wrap-up of March or a TBR of April. I'll kind of see what I have ready to do here, but that's what I'm doing. Also, you can't see the true glory of my new nerdy shirt. You might remember that I got a couple of new books and a nerdy shirt to commemorate when I hit the 500 subscribers. So I will have to just insert a selfie of this wonderful nerdy hobbity shirt that I got. And I do really want to reread The Hobbit this year. So I'll be wearing this shirt again when that time comes around. All right, I think that's it. Let me know what you've read by Octavia Butler. So I'm reading these two books and I've read Kindred. Where should I go next if you have any guidance on this topic? And that's about it. What else have you been reading or watching? I hope you've had a really interesting reading week and that things are going well. I will be back soon. Take care. Bye bye.